New tonight, the growing pains in our city are being felt across the state as juvenile crime continues to rise. Charlotte-Mecklenburg police report juvenile crime has spiked to its highest levels in at least 5 years. In July, CMPD reported 61% of total juvenile arrests in Charlotte were repeat offenders. It's an issue that has stakeholders placing blame on the justice system.
But as WBTV's Claire Kopsky explains, state law and the data agree the issue points back to the need for more beds in juvenile detention.
After the flashing lights stop and the caution tape goes away, the wheels of justice start moving.
Behind the scenes, the reports, the supplements, the interviews, the follow-ups, the court process.
That whole process to often see the same kids committing the same crimes.
You know, it's more infuriating, really. Most of the time, they're repeat violent offenders.
So far in 2024, at least 12% more juveniles have been arrested in Mecklenburg County than the year prior, and more than half of them were repeat offenders.
We've also heard from mothers in this community who have begged officers and DAs and judges to keep their child in custody because they're afraid for their child's safety.
CMPD Deputy Chief David Robinson says because of the difficulties getting judges to sign off on secure custody orders that would hold juvenile offenders in locked juvenile detention centers, their officers only request that order for the most serious cases. As of July, CMPD said the Department of Juvenile Justice had already denied 62 of their secure custody order requests.
Well, I question the assumption that the prosecutors and the judges are just kind of giving away the courthouse. I think that the growing pains are a factor in what goes on in the court system. It's not like we have this environment where people are turning a blind eye to serious violent offenses. That's not my experience.
In a statement to WBTV, Mecklenburg County Chief District Court Judge Roy Wiggins explained judges who are making these decisions have, quote, taken an oath to faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all of the duties entrusted to them. As WBTV dug deeper, the data pointed beyond the courthouse. In an annual meeting earlier this year, the North Carolina Sheriff's Association listed providing adequate funding as a core policy recommendation for the state's juvenile justice and delinquency prevention, citing inadequate capacity in juvenile detention centers as the reason it's difficult to get judges to issue secure custody orders. Scattered across North Carolina, there are 18 juvenile detention and youth development centers currently housing more than 450 kids. 7 of those facilities are currently over capacity. 5 more facilities have kids in at least 90% of their beds. And out of all the juveniles currently in those facilities across the state, 20% of those beds are currently filled with kids from Mecklenburg County.
Officers and detectives question why it is that they're putting so much work into it, but they still do it because they don't do it for the outcome of the court process. They do it to show justice and determination and respect for the family of the loved ones who are grieving.
Mecklenburg County had a 72-bed juvenile detention center called Jail North. It was closed in November of 2022 under Sheriff Gary McFadden. We asked Sheriff McFadden about when Jail North might reopen, and we're told there are no plans to do so. When we repeatedly asked about whether or not he saw the need for a juvenile detention center in Charlotte, he said that he, quote, believes that reopening a juvenile detention facility in the county is necessary, and said that the issue is in discussion among county and city officials, law enforcement, and community leaders. Back to you.